Okay.
Okay, I really, I can't tell you how excited I am to have Andrew Staub come here and present with us. Casey won OKI, and I just think that this is what happens when you come to your first meeting here and you mentioned to me you're interested in drones. And before I know, I said, I would love to have someone talk about drones. And I followed up and he said yes. And even though there's a million things why you shouldn't say no, he kept saying yes. He sent me a draft last week, and then he sent me another draft that's even more amazing. So good for you for everything you're doing. And his wife sitting in the back there, Meryl, and her good friend Emily, whose uncle is also a club member. So it's all a small world, but he himself doesn't totally feel like a Rhode Islander because you know how it is, right? You know, he hasn't been here.
Wow, break the ice, thank you.
So now we know, because you know, I had children here, and my children are Rhode Islanders, but not me. So we all totally get it here. So we really wanted to have him come here and have you all really make him feel like a Rhode Islander here. So that's part of it. And when he told me that he'd also be happy to teach a hands-on soldering class on top of everything, I thought, I'm totally sold here now. So you're not going to do that tonight, but you have all your gear here in the middle of everything. So please welcome Andrew while he gets his presentation.
What I recommend. Do a little show and tell,
Yeah.
and then while you're doing that, I'm gonna kill the audio to the remote.
Yeah.
For people to hear it, so like at a USB slot, then I'll load it, and then we'll
And
be
you're
all
gonna
set.
move
again.
over
Sorry
there
to
to-
overload you. I didn't think.
No, it's okay. It's not a problem. Just give me,
So-
Yeah.
everybody on remote's
All right.
gonna go
Let me
quiet
go
for a
back.
minute, that's all.
Okay.
And where's the camera looking?
Right now, it's facing over there, so.
Is that
Turn it over here. Now they can see, they just.
Yeah,
can't
there
hear.
you go.
I fly our first person view. So you're putting on goggles and you're flying like a video game, but very immersive. Then I also brought a screen. So I didn't know what was best for everybody to. Do you have any input on that? Where's a good spot for me to
What do you want, power?
power or to pass things around so they can?
I think you should do your presentation first, and then we can sort of break to do that, because it's such a great presentation, and it'll be recorded too, right?
Well, this is just-
Yeah, it's recording
And
now.
then we can break on,
Oh.
Ah.
Got it.
Yeah. Oh, that's because it don't need that.
so as he said, there's really, you know, he could talk for a super long time here, but I think it's good to at least get this, his slide deck is really great, and we'll just start with that. And I think it'll be harder for the
I'm
people.
sure that's fine. A lot better for everyone to have something in their hand. See what the heck I'm talking about.
Bob, can you hear this now? No?
I can hear it good.
Yeah, hold on, wait a minute. I think I need to.
I can hear you, Paul, but can't hear the speaker.
You can hear the speakerphone now?
No, I cannot hear the speaker, but I can hear you. I
Okay,
cannot
you're
hear
hearing
the
me.
presentation.
Oh, wait a minute. That's because, all right, hold on.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that better?
Yeah, your audio is great. It's just the presenter.
Oh, the presenter's walking around the room, unfortunately. So he's not really saying anything except showing the drones off.
Okay.
So he'll be on in a second. We'll double check to make sure his audio is okay.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, I just got to bring his presentation up, that's all. Just want to make sure it's You're gonna be recorded on here, but you don't have to, if you're there, it'll pick you up fine. If they yell.
But I'll carry it for them.
Yeah, and I'm gonna verify that right now, but let me get you started first. and then Something. No, that's not, give me a second.
No, so that's carbon fiber, aluminum. So it is heavy, it's chunky, but imagine, so you see how the arm, that chunk thing, right? So this thing goes 75 miles an hour. Whoa. So imagine the point. So you like that portion. Sure. So these are, in fact, this design is pretty bad.
I'm not sure if it copied correctly, that's my
For the,
problem.
there's frame resonance.
Do you want him to?
That's like, I mean, imagine.
Oh, here it is, okay. It was in a different location in the phone.
Because I really want to make sure.
You can get your hand.
Yeah, I have to bring it up, hold on.
Feel the motors. If you feel the motors, when you turn it around, they're really chunky. The magnets are.
And you're recording still,
brushless
right?
motors.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Not opening
And so what
correctly.
you're seeing here is the electronic speed control. So not all of these are complete. Some of, I've had to like piece them apart, repair one and kind of like, because it gets.
Did you
ridiculous.
say you had this?
And it's very expensive to just make that.
You say- Oh, wait a minute, I got it now.
Yeah.
Yes.
How the heck do you put that connector in?
It is a pain in the butt.
I was gonna say,
This UFO, yeah, but when you crash, things move a little bit and then it rips it off. And then the shape is never the same.
Yeah.
So then you end up using hot glue to stick it together, you gotta get back in the air.
Right.
So I didn't mean to give you what I was in.
That's right. What's the,
Yeah, so on this specific model, GoPro cameras, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so you stick GoPro on here, it's specifically made.
not finding it?
No, I got it, it's not opening.
Because what I'll talk about is, when you're flying, your camera is in a.
John?
You can't move.
You can probably put on, John is on there.
John?
John?
Because I'll talk about, the only reason this is in the air, because it's differential between the turn, the yaw, it's not perfectly like, because the motors are pointing here, but then you're using differential, like here, so it's slowing itself here, so then you have a lot of failure.
Doesn't have a USB on his machine.
So, how are the way.
This should open,
Really important because you can barely have battery and. the
Andrew, can you
GoPro.
email your presentation to Paul?
Try.
He's not.
It's not, is it corrupted? What's
It's,
going on?
it's saying, I'm trying to open this PowerPoint
Yeah,
and it says not responding, like it's taking too long or.
I mean, what you can do, if you want, you can run the PowerPoint that you already have. There's always like the.
Where was the one you had? I mean, I got a Google account, I got a Yahoo account.
OneDrive, I'll just send it to you.
really?
I don't understand why it's not opening off the top of my head.
I'm sorry to delay everyone.
Okay,
I swear it was working perfectly on the
well,
drive.
the problem is my audio system is taking up all my USB. So I had copied it to my drive.
Yeah.
And I can't open it. It's not open.
Does he want?
So I can
Can you-
kill the
can you
audio.
Email it to me?
K1YB at Yahoo.
Yahoo.
Yeah, that's the best.
Are you trying to get you the email?
Yeah, he's emailing it.
Okay. I was gonna say I can drive it from the bank if I get it, but I need a docking station.
Yeah, I understand.
Sorry again.
No worries.
No,
I didn't know how to make this seamless. I thought, well, I'll give something to everybody. They'll touch it, they'll understand it.
All good.
And then
no, it's all good.
start
all
the
good.
presentation.
It's all good.
All these private residents. He suggested.
You'll see it in the reflection on your check that we give you for the show and tell.
So you
Fair
said- you
enough.
said-
You're only gonna get half what we're gonna give you before.
I thought you said.
I didn't work a whole day.
Sure.
You know,
Okay, well, we can talk to him about.
You gotta think of what I'm doing here.
Kim wants to-
I'm thinking like, okay, I got the mail.
All right.
Now I can, what?
I mean, it wasn't- Everybody gets to.
Oh, it's on your OneDrive.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's gonna need your password.
Do you have a password? You can enter it.
So many other sites.
Yeah. You don't know what it
I'll
is?
just give it to you. I don't even know what it is. I just thought I could send it to you from my OneDrive.
Well, you usually
I'm gonna do it
can.
right now.
For some reason, it's being fussy.
That's our struggle. This late in the year, all the.
Well, this would be terrible after all this.
No, and so that's why we.
Nobody's got a PC. Anybody got a PC with them? A laptop?
So I'm gonna just deal with.
No,
this.
okay.
We'll talk about it.
Well, it's his account. I will find a solution to this in a minute if I don't, if this doesn't work, but I'm not sure this is gonna help, but
Let me see if I can.
I'm gonna do it a different. Is yours a PDF?
Yeah, so we have.
No, it's a PowerPoint.
But we have a PDF that you can, you do.
Yes.
You do have a, so
Where-
then you have to sign on to Zoom, so let's just do the PDF.
All right, where is, it? You're gonna send it to me? You're gonna get it somewhere to drive?
We'll have it and.
We both have it.
You know, we're doing it.
I really can't believe it doesn't work off the.
It should. I don't,
And you don't have one extra in here.
no, of course not. 'Cause
No.
This,
Well,
this,
if we took off the mouse.
oh, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. Let's do that.
You know, I mean, I am,
Let's do that. Yeah, that's cool.
I'm breaking your wrist on that, but
I mean, it saw it. I thought it loaded it, but. No, yeah, stop using the mouse button.
And that worked?
We'll find it. We'll know in a second. Touch screen beside, so.
Okay, so here's his PowerPoint and I'm gonna send this to you, right now, okay?
Yep. It's doing the same thing, not responding. Is it really big?
28 megabytes. It's not that big. It's not,
No,
I didn't have any trouble opening it. I mean,
I opened it as well. The world's first.
well,
Okay, so here we go. So I just sent it to you as a PDF.
is in, to which account?
To Yahoo.
Okay, what, to Yahoo?
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for it to come in.
so when you tried to open my OneDrive file, it made it password. Oh, I see. So it password protected the OneDrive file. I see. It's, yeah. it's downloaded. Well, sorry, Paul.
I mean, I've been there once or twice, I know. Long's field day works when we stop field day. That's what matters. That's what stuff solves.
All right.
There we go. All right. There you go.
Yeah. Now let me share it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we gonna be able to maximize?
Yeah. Give me, I'm just trying to get, I'm trying to get to the meeting again. Okay. And now we want to. Screen it. It's still not the,
Well, if we close that bar on the bottom,
Yeah.
you know, the download bar.
Amazing. I could fry it.
at the bottom? Oh,
Yeah, if we just keep out of that, down by the.
Yeah, sure, because.
well, that's, that should go away. I don't know why that's not going away.
I've got a 718, and I got 718.
There's another thing going on here. So the other attempt to try to get the other presentation.
Bought,
Slowing you down.
I had bought,
The-
600 watt amp
Okay,
on the output,
let's see if I can maximize this.
and I'm afraid to hook it up.
With the PDF, I don't think I can get rid of.
Radio.
Yeah. Well, the only thing you might be able to get rid of is that the bottom, the download bar at the bottom, and also, either way, it doesn't matter.
What I'm gonna do
We'll go
is
for
one
it.
last thing is I'm gonna try and send you.
Maybe I'm just being a little paranoid, and I was concerned that if
I think everyone can see the PDF.
I think they can.
Yeah.
they make an interface to protect the radios, I
Okay,
understand.
let me get to the top.
You know, they make there's a
You
go
want to
between.
go the PDF?
Yeah, let's go with
They have
PDF.
a-
it up.
it's-
Okay, let me
relay.
just-
If you hit the mute button on the top left.
Yeah, there's
that
gotta be a relay.
collapse
You only have a transfer.
That, with that collapse.
This guy?
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Oh, that's
We-
better.
Like we X out on the bottom right of the where it says show all, you know, that download bar at the bottom, we might get just a little, there we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not gonna make it any bigger though. Oh, wait a minute, I can go.
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, look at that. Look at that. Okay. There you
Looks
go.
good,
Good
Paul.
move. Okay. Okay, let me just hold on one second. Bob, can you see this and hear this? Okay.
Yeah, it looks
Okay,
good.
All right, we're ready to go.
Fine.
Okay, thanks.
You don't have to yell into this. I just,
Right.
All right. Sorry about that.
we have a good recording of me messing this up. So
Okay.
it's all right.
It's okay. Can I stand right here? Is
We
this
can,
good to
we
go?
can, it's perfect.
All right. All right. Did everyone get a little peek at the drones? All right. I mean, you know, you guys know what a circuit board looks like. You know, it's basically got, you know, a power system. It's coming in from a battery. The battery you use is pretty special. It's like a high amp draw lithium polymer battery. So like, there's a slide in there, but it just like, if you get into drones, just gonna start with the most dangerous part, the batteries, beyond how you fly, the batteries. I have a steel toolbox, got a fire alarm inside. I lined it with silicone. All the batteries are kept inside of these fiberglass burn-proof bags. The chemistry is unstable. You have to manage them quite a bit. That's the worst part beyond rebuilding, which is also the best part. So, this is the setup. You're gonna be looking really nerdy with some goggles on. Your first couple times you fly, you start gyrating. You don't know what you're doing. You're going really fast and you have no idea how fast you're actually going. Your field of view is really, really limited. So at the end, I've got some goggles. I'll show you guys. You're not going to be able to understand that whether you're going 2 miles an hour or you're going 60 miles an hour. I mean, which they're very capable. As long as you stay under 100 miles an hour, you're legal. What you fly over is a whole other thing. Go to the next slide.
Remember, I got the,
Yeah. we just got it.
that's all right. Wait a minute. No, not that. Oh, that's the, wait a minute, that's all right, okay. I took my mouse out, so,
Sorry.
oops. Now I get the stupid thing on the top.
You know, we could pop the USB out. You could get the mouse back. You know, the thumb drive. You could pull the thumb drive out because we're not using it.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Okay. So let me just finish that thought. You have no idea really how fast you're going because you have no perspective. You're in this like really limited field of view. At the same time, it's a really your body connects to what your eyes see because you're not feeling anything other than the sticks.
Camera,
There's only one camera.
stereoscopic.
It's stereoscopic into your eye, but it's not a 3D image. They did try drones with 3D image and people got knocked. And so, you know, since we can't move it, yeah, we'll just go with the camera in, oh, it's taken away. The camera in the front that you guys all see, or some of them are kind of pieced apart, but that camera's fixed. And so what you take off with is what you're gonna fly with. And so like 25 degrees up angle, you know, depending on the amount of power in a given drone, that could be like, you know, 45, 50 miles an hour. And you can only fly on these batteries for, I've got some specs later on. But you know, anywhere from like 2 minutes on one of these very tiny drones with like the shrouded prop, it's called a whoop. Maybe you're flying for 2 to 5 minutes. but it's because it's a 1-cell battery and you're really pushing it. And even that little thing could go 20 miles an hour. It just doesn't do it well out in the open wind because there's a lot of resistance. But so this is me, my day job. I'm a lawyer. At night, I fix these drones when I am flying them. My wife is in the back. This is what I like to do. I just joined the club like, what's it, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, at most. So I got into ham radio because I wanted to stay legal with the drones. So a couple of the members were asking initially about the camera system. 5.8 gigahertz is the video system, the video link coming to the goggles. And 2.4, give or take, is the transmitter. So I don't know if anyone here has done like radio control, but like the classic stuff, overly complicated, tons of channels, you know. Yeah. So that's how I got to ham radios. And then Nancy got me to do this presentation. Paul's moved on. In terms of ham radios, I want to do the Parks on the Air thing. You guys were talking about the mesh networks before. So, you know, you can have all these cool imaginatory dreams about what you could do with drones because the signal is super limited. It's very, very local. The signal, you have a really hard time with the video signal at 5.8. There's tons of background interference, right? Everyone's running Wi-Fi. Everyone has, you know, cell phones. There's a ton of background interference. These are not the best electronics. So filtering is not that great. And then your broadcast, the amount of transmission you get is really, really low because you're capped out at 1 megawatt or 1 watt, not 1 megawatt, 1 watt transmission power on the video. And so you will have, you know, directional control, but you will lose video very early. And so, you know, when we can get to the next slide, I'll show you.
Oh, you want to go to the next slide?
Let's go to the next slide. There wasn't the next one that I thought, but this is the one we have. The video is, you get different versions of either a snow or frozen pixelated images. And I'll talk to you about like the digital versus analog. But like a good radio, your antenna is everything. Here, the antennas are moving. You're basically flying an antenna, like a small, like you're flying a little radio tower. And where it's pointing is not necessarily the best place for the antenna to be pointing. So for instance, you can fly out, your antennas are pointing at each other. When you return to fly home, your antennas are no longer pointing at each other. And so if you have background interference, suddenly you're far away, you lose the drone. So how does the drone fly? It does not have wings, it needs power. And so the differential between the various props is what gives you your direction. And you can change the orientation of the drone, but still not apply that to forward momentum. So it's very disorienting. It's not like, you know, 2 wings orienting yourself to fly forward. Here, you could spin on an axis and be flying the drone in the same direction because nothing changed because of the way that there's no true forward for a drone. It's whatever you want to orient forward. And so it can be somewhat confusing. So that's the best thing if you want to do this drone thing. You start on a simulator on the computer, you get the video game, you get the transmitter, and you play hours and hours and hours because you will crash so much. Ask me how I know. I did not start on the simulator.
You just keep buying drones.
I have successfully not bought drones until I was thoroughly in the hobby. I've built everything. So all the big ones you guys are seeing, I've home built and rebuilt. And my wife has laughed every time because I will spend hours building and it won't be a short, but it'll inevitably something with like a bad USB pin because these are all exposed. And you spend hours rebuilding it only to find out that, now the header for the USB is broken and now you either have to do some workaround or anyway, so it's put. And then
Tell me when you want to switch.
Let's go to the next page. All right, so we were talking about the antennas. So again, these wonderful goggles that look so impressive when you're looking at a photo like that and look horrendous when you're standing around. That's everything for you to navigate. And there's another slide in here where I show you what it looks like to fly the drone. These are not clear images. You can barely see trees until they're quite close. You have no depth perception. And these types of drones are also completely different than what you see, in the movies, on TV, right? You see people in a park flying a drone. Those are camera drones. They're pretty self-reliant. So the drone knows how to hover. The drone knows how to react if a little bit of wind pushes it. The drone can hover over a specific spot. It can keep the right altitude. These, if you stop flying, if you stop applying force in a controlled manner, it's gonna keep going in whatever direction you just left it in the air. Or if it runs out of battery, it does not have a safe landing. It has a come down wherever the battery decides to drop out. So totally different than like the DJI or the Parrot or Skydio or.
And those batteries do drop out. They don't stay. It's either on or off.
Well, but they give you a little, sometimes they give you a little warning and they might start trying to get home, whether or not, there's, if you let it hover for too long. And also it tells you what the maximum control link distance is. So it'll stop you from going too far. This will not. If you go too far, you have gone too far, and you pray that your video signal was recording in your goggles because you pushed the button before you started flying, so that you could literally watch the video and go find it in the woods. It's fun. But the antennas are super important. So these are the different, the control link. I normally fly on 900 megahertz or 2.4 gigahertz. That's what my transmitter is on. And then my video, I solely use 5.8. 1.3 is for more experimental long distance. And but the shape of your antennas, because you can't change it in the air, and only the most experimental drones have some sort of thing to move the antenna on a servo inside towards you. So when you take off, the shape of that antenna and how it's I don't know the technical name, whatever, on the spectrum analyzer, the shape of
The radiation
the
pattern.
radiation pattern. You're stuck with it. It's either good or it's bad, and your drone will or will not survive based on you seeing where you're going.
Andrew, the 1.3 gig band, is that a public thing or is that an amateur band?
So there's crossover. You have to have ham certification for the video. The transmission link on the 2.4, because it's encrypted. On 900, you're supposed to also have ham.
Yeah,
But on the 2.4, you can get away with it because it's like one of those kind of closed box products that you can't be modified. But
yeah, it's a SHID product. Yeah, it's a SHID band.
But on the 1.3, like you're talking about, and technically on the 5.8, because within the spectrum, there's controlled frequencies, and some of the video transmitters that you put in, they will have locked out frequencies coming in from the factory, and then they'll inevitably, in the instructions on the last line, it'll tell you how to escape all that, give you over 1 watt, and or whatever its maximum is, and get you into some edges of frequencies which shouldn't have. Let's go to the next one. Thanks for the radiation pattern.
No,
So, like I was saying, you're gonna wear these funny goggles. Nobody looks cool like this. And most of the time, the drone will be taken apart like that because it will be broken. And the type of drone that you're looking at here is, again, a first-person view FPV freestyle drone. Very different, again, than your DJI fixed product, which creates a great end product of a sweeping view because it's got a gimbaled camera, and it can stabilize very well in the air. But it cannot do any sort of those jet fighter maneuvers. This is that, and because it's so immersive, it really feels like that when you're flying. It's very addictive because you are carving up the air or crashing. So that's actually a video. If you click the link, the FPV flight video, hopefully we're okay.
well, we might not get is there audio in it too?
Well, it's YouTube. It's not my thing.
Well, I can't get the audio remotely.
Let's not do the audio. Let's just let everyone appreciate, what, can you maximize it?
That's not this.
This is, so, some of it might be stutter, but that, the guy flying this there's no little target in his screen. This is his spatial awareness in the goggle enabling him to just be so practiced, that he can flow like this without any sort of. We'll now add on to this, that this is an HD camera that's taped to the top. What he's seeing is grainy footage like you see on an old, like a backup camera on your car or old security video type thing. It's not hyper crystal
He's
clear.
not seeing.
He's seeing this, but in a much more raw version. This is a GoPro that's strapped on top. Here you might be going 30 miles an hour, but it can go from dead stop to 50 or 60 miles an hour in no time because it's just 4 propellers with a raw amount of time. If you were to think of this in like car terms, think of like a 700 or 800 horsepower car that has an incredible amount of grip. And like, where normally would be sitting your tires here, you are just rippled. This is probably a 5-inch drone. So everything you guys see, there's only 2 5-inch drones that I've got on the tables there. Everything else is like a 3-inch or smaller. It's incredible. And it's exhausting too. So this, watch him fly this down. How does he estimate that? Because he's throwing himself in. How do you think it's just practice maneuvering and knowing the drone range?
Well, there's a certain amount of danger involved with getting run into this. So you get run into.
Totally.
If you get run into with this drone, you're gonna get hurt.
That's why he's a lawyer.
100% gonna get hurt. One of the most dangerous things is plugging the battery in and not thinking carefully about, did you flip the safety switch on the remote? Because it will 100% de-sheath a finger, take off a finger, cut your hand like to the bone. These are incredibly stiff props. They're super durable. And he could do a crack coming out of this, and the drone would probably be able to fly away. As long as he didn't break an arm or something like that, the props are so durable. So think, flesh is nothing to this thing. And yes, if you flew into somebody, it's basically a carbon fiber arrow. So, we're going to talk about the legality, but let's not diminish creativity, because this is beautiful, right? You're surfing in the air.
You want to play it to the end?
We can stop. I don't. You guys had enough.
Well, there's
I left a bunch of YouTube links at the end.
there's 15 more seconds, so I think it crashes at the end, so we might as well play it then.
How much experience did this guy have?
This is like one of the top pilots in the world. I think he's only got like 6 years experience. So in terms of like, military jet aviation, 6 years is like not an insane amount, but here, this is the top of the world-class drone pilot. So I think there's a learning curve. There's definitely going to be some crashing, but everyone can do it, and it's super fun. It comes down to just really careful hand gestures.
Happened to our presentation.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the frequencies that you use?
Yeah, so 900 megahertz. And this is just technician class, which is all I have. And then 5.8 is the video spectrum. So the transmitter is normally on 900 megahertz or 2.4. It's on 2.4, you don't need a ham radio license. And for the video transmission, 5.8. And then if you really are experimenting, there's some other bands, but I won't.
How do you identify
Identify what?
your call sign? How you hear it?
Oh, yeah, so, do you? Yeah, you're supposed to. Technically, so I'll show you another slide further on. You have an on-screen display, and that, you're openly projecting a signal. Your transmission is open. It's not encrypted. So you can put your call sign on the overlay for the on-screen display. But no, you do not transmit at the end of every 10 minutes and say your call sign in that way. Normally you're flying for less than 10 minutes. So, and I think I don't know how it gets by. I know it's not really being checked on that much because it's such short flight windows. It's a question. For instance, in terms of my actual transmitter though, so at 900 megahertz, I put my call sign into the software on the back of the transmitter, and it's reproducing it, I think, in Morse code. I don't really know. I've not checked on it. It's a great question though, because there are some there's some conflict between, you know, the classic FCC rules for ham radio and how you operate these drones, because it's not, I mean, I guess on ham radio signals, you can televise images on a certain frequency, correct?
Correct, yes.
And so for that, you have to put your call sign at the end, right? In between the image or on the image itself? Do both count
On it.
on the image?
I think you just have to identify in the video itself.
Okay.
I don't think it's that specific as to what, where you have to put it or anything.
Yeah, well, so I think that accomplishes that. You're broadcasting your license. So, you know, what can you do with drones? You're talking about, could somebody get hurt with drones? Somebody can get hurt with drones, but it's a pretty exciting thing. I don't have the ideas that you know, Domino's is going to come drop your pizza off, because these batteries are expensive. And if commercial drones are doing this, I don't know how. You have power lines all over your streets. You have trees everywhere, you know, in between a storm, a tree, you know, may come a little lower on your property. How in the world are these companies going to perfectly manage flying a drone around, you know, suburban neighborhoods and stuff? You asking something?
Yeah, I just want to point out that Bob B. posted that they use the color streamers on the transmitter, kind of like what we do in RC world. So he doesn't know all the requirements.
Oh, you hang a flag off your transmitter?
Yep. To let them know what frequency you're operating.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood the question. So like, because the classic transmitters, you'd use like those crystals and you didn't want to like start up. And in fact, that's a great point. If you're flying with other people, and these video systems have terrible filtering. If you plug in your drone when somebody else is already flying, you will 100% intercept or crash out their signal, and they will probably crash. It's like a common thing that if you're flying with one, you think I'm going to land and put a new battery in and somebody else is in the air. Don't do it, because the video transmitters are really not great quality, and they kind of like do this burst when you first plug it in, and it goes across a bunch of different frequencies, and it totally blinds the other person. So they'll be flying in the air, suddenly they're looking at the ground from your drone, and then, you know, they have to sort that out.
Lots of fighting in this fight.
What's that?
There's lots of fighting in this.
I have not found that. There's a lot of, you know, so I've done some of the racing. I've failed miserably. The camaraderie has been really nice. You get a pat in the back when you break a drone. So, you know, there's been no fight, and most people in this hobby are really into the fixing part of it. So you're all problem solving each other's issues. You know, yeah.
Okay.
I toss in a frequency thought.
You can do with the drone.
Andrew, there's a question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Is there a question from the crowd there?
Hey,
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to comment that back in the olden days, when people were flying radio controlled model airplanes, the standard practice was to have a bunch of clothespins with frequencies marked on them. And if you were using that frequency, you had the clothespin, and you'd clip it on your antenna or on your control box. And there were people who were flying using the ham frequencies, but they also obeyed the I've got the clothespin, so you shouldn't be flying now.
Yeah, and so today you can, you know, doing on drones, because of the way the frequency allowed for the 5.8 video transmission, you can basically get 8 people in the air, and that's as crowded as you can be. And what I'll show in a minute is you have now the new digital spectrum of video transmission, which is a lot more of it. It's a much denser signal. It's still near 5.8. And so flying with people with analog and digital is a complication. It's a new thing. But I actually got into the hobby doing the radio controlled airplanes, the model airplanes, and I thought that was awesome. I really love the scale factor of it, but the drone the quadcopter, you can take off and land from anywhere, as long as you're within legal airspace. And so, you know, that's kind of where I transitioned, was like during COVID, not having to go to a flying field that was closed down, not having to depend on the infrastructure of a flying club, was really something that drew me in to not only making my own stuff, but flying these FPV drones. So anyways, that's my little list of like everything that you can do with a drone. But there's even more. I have no idea. Let's go to the next one. So this is true long range. I know we're running a little past what Nancy wanted. All right, I don't want to keep anyone.
Questions until we can decide about this.
All right, so the one on the left, that's a ground station, but it's a tracking station. So it's actually going to point to your drone. Your drone is going to have, one of my drones has a little square ceramic top on the rear end. I don't know where it is. That's a GPS. Yeah, so that's a GPS sensor. You know, everyone thinks GPS is really expensive. It's GPS signal or transmitting all the time. You just need like a $18 sensor to pick it up. And then it's going to transmit that back to normally over the video ground station. It transmits that, and then it's going to point the array. But you cannot fly these drones all that far. To get really far away, you need to go back to efficiency, and efficiency is not a quadcopter. Efficiency is totally a winged aircraft that can loiter, or, you know, kind of just cruise at a low output for a long ways when the sky is very clear, no matter what. If there's a lot of wind, whether there's not a lot of wind, a quadcopter, or there's also hexacopter, octocopter, always drawing a ton of power, always inefficient. So if you want to go really long range, it needs to be an airplane.
Come on, come on. Should be moving.
And those are foam. That's like package, like foam that comes from, you know, put your TV in it. Really, really repairable. So I was talking before about, you know, what do you see through this goggle? This really grainy image is this person probably going, you know, 30 to 50 miles an hour. And there's information that, you know, you can barely perceive. You can put it on there. You can choose to select that box and put on, you know, whatever, the directional, right? So out of 360 degrees, I'm going 298. You know, the only really important ones are the milliamp hours in the top left, the voltage, and the RSSI down here on the bottom. Everything else, you know, it's just superfluous information. You cannot perceive it when you're flying that fast. You have to be, it's nonsense. But your battery on the top left and your transmitter strength indicator, which is the RSSI, that's what you're looking at. And beyond that, you're really not focusing on looking at the screen. You're kind of like doing this 1,000-yard stare through the screen, and it's very hard to plan your flight. You can create like a normal pilot, a flight plan, but then you are flying. It's very hard to think in like a very active sense. So you're more, you know, reacting. And so it draws out this kind of like creativity, because you're just cruising through the air, and it's almost overwhelming to have like active thoughts. I don't know how to quite describe that, but it's
now that information is coming back to you.
Yes.
From that's being transmitted via the video link or something.
So yes, so on the drone, you have this thing called a flight controller. The flight controller is taking in all the information from, if you have GPS, you have the video transmitter, if it gives back a signal, the control link, the transmitter link, all of that is coming into the flight controller, and then it's putting out a signal to the electronic speed controller, which controls the motors, those 3-phase motors. That's how you're doing so the flight controller has the gyro chip for stabilization. It also has this thing called an overlay, the graphics overlay, that takes in the video signal from the camera and then pastes on this information from the various sensors. And so the battery sensor is in the ESC. It's all communicating backwards and forwards. And so one wire comes off, everything goes wrong. You know, and there's a lot of vibration on this thing. So there's harmonics. These frames that you see are probably like the bigger ones, $100. But it makes a huge difference to not have a lot of frame resonance, because I didn't even bring up how you have to tune these things. There's so much vibration going on, and you want to get the maximum out of the motors. It's like tuning, a carburetor or a fuel injection on a dyno. There's a lot that goes into it. It's called this PID loop. I know PID loop is in a lot of like more industrial senses, uses. So three-phase motors, PID loop is a pretty normal thing. You're tuning that to fly it at the very limits. And so, yes, you're getting that image. It's a pasted together image from the camera and then the flight control.
Going on?
Yeah. So I won't, we talked a little bit about the 5.8 video. The digital is the one on the bottom right. That's from it's a closed protocol. It looks really good. They've made the delay, the latency much better. They're really expensive. It's a proprietary closed loop system, meaning that the camera and the transmitter on the drone has to match the brand of goggle. Not gonna worry about it. The only downside to all the upside is when your signal breaks up, you're not flying through snow. So like maybe on a ham radio, you're contacting someone pretty darn far away because you get some breakup in there and you can just filter it out. With a digital goggle, digital video, it pixelates and it freezes. And so you're looking at, what you were looking at 5 seconds ago, and you're wondering, what am I looking at now? That's the downside, is when the signal gets sketchy, it is completely useless. Versus if you go down the next one.
You don't need to shave to drive the drone. Again.
What's that?
You don't need to shave.
What do you mean?
This guy.
Yeah, all these guys are too cool to shave. And they're also having a great time. Normally, when I'm flying, I'm like, my lips are pursed. I'm scared. I've just built this thing and I don't know how to get it down. That's not totally true. But the other slide there was just the analog. You get snow, you get signal breakup, but it's proportional to whatever's in the way, whatever's interfering. So, let's say a great place to fly is indoors. So let's say you find an empty parking garage and you fly indoors. Well, that has a lot of rebar in the concrete. You turn a corner, suddenly, the signal is going great. You turn a corner and you are seeing 100% snow. But, snow, you can kind of fly through, give or take, versus a frozen image. So, again, I would go cheaper analog. I don't know who I'm convincing here, but if you need to be convinced, go cheaper. Although they say that the digital stuff is really, really nice now. Okay, so in front of you, you have two different types, you have a couple different types of drones. You have the ones that are shrouded, the small little whoops, and with the plastic frame, and then you have, the more open one. You can only carry so much battery. And like that whole, payload versus your power to weight ratio. If you want to like have good maneuverability, be able to zip around a room like this, it's got to be really nice.
Moving on.
To the next. So I passed out some of these. This is a little bit more of a mix of, the safety of a small drone, right? So can you hurt somebody with this? The props, yeah, you could get cut, but it's a lot less mass, a lot less carbon. But this thing can still go 30 miles an hour. And so you can get up pretty far. You can go a decent distance because it's able to carry just enough of a payload to have a good transmitter. So some of the really tiny drones in front of you only have like a 25 milliwatt video transmitter. This can carry like a 500 milliwatt. And so it gets you out, into the woods or something. And they're quiet. So the big drones, this is the other thing. The big drones in front of you, they sound like a weed whacker. They're loud. It's annoying. And it's when you really give it a high burst of throttle, it's a shrill because you are ripping the air. And so these are a lot lighter and much quieter, much more neighborly friendly. Let's go to the next.
It's floaty mean.
So the one you've got in front of you, even though it's not all built up, you felt how solid it was, right? When you get it built up, it's a flying brick. It might be able to lift through the motors, say 10 or 15 pounds. But it's still, when you turn the motors off, even when they're at idle, it's just a ton of mass like flying through the air, which is great because you can then accelerate and use your momentum to fling yourself over the top of a tree and back down. Whereas that one before, floaty, you can't really fling yourself because it's got low mass compared to like how much prop it's got. And so it's more efficient in the air. And it's like, imagine like a dragonfly versus a bumblebee. Just a little bit more nimble in the air, but also not able to catapult itself. Yeah. So this is when you see like movies where you see these kind of like weird floating images and you think, is that a drone? It's most likely one of these carrying a GoPro or a really expensive version of it where you're carrying like one of those digital red cameras or whatever. And it's just a scaled up version of the same thing. So these you can insure on like a movie set because it's a much lower likelihood that you're going to hurt somebody because they're shrouded. But the downside is they don't have maneuverability to the side because that proportional force is limited by the guard. So the benefit is also the burden. So that's what that yaw washout is. Yeah, we'll go to the next one. And you know what most of you guys have in front of you are like the freestyle drones. I don't have any racing drones; those are all broken. I can't tell you how close I got to making it through the gate, only to find that it would break on the gate. So you know, shooting those gaps and imagining how you're proportionally positioned through it takes a ton of work. But yeah, I don't know if that may not be the best slide, but you know, basically the freestyle drones, which are the really heavy ones you guys are holding, they're very durable. But the more durability you put into it, the more it's just eating up the power just to fly the thing in the air. So imagine going, you know, a few full throttle pushes and you're going 70 miles an hour, and then you've got to come in and, you know, avoid the ground after you do some sort of maneuver in the air. It's just sucking the battery out. And so that's where that floaty thing comes in, where it's just a lot more efficient. Yeah, I'll close the next one. So again, I'm pushing the whole, you know, if you're going to get into this, I really enjoy these tiny whoops because they're so nimble. You would just dismiss it as a toy, but in fact, if any of you have a yard that is, say, like as long as I am right here, as long as you have that, or you have a big basement, you can fly this thing like you can't believe. People have these race courses. They're not that expensive. They don't break very much because again, they're not very heavy. So, you know, when you're impacting something, one, there's protected props, and two, there's not a lot there's not a lot of carbon fiber to break, kind of bounces off. But you can get hair stuck in it, and my wife will attest to that. Can you click that little video at the bottom?
Cool.
And the batteries are cheaper in this. There's less to maintain. They're much simpler. They're not multi-cell batteries. They're single cell batteries.
Calmly waiting, wondering when will my life.
I need to talk to the professionals.
Can you believe it? I don't even matter on my life. I think you're almost in my
Yes. It's totally disoriented. You have no idea how fast you're going. You're just immersed, and the name is that you're able to like do these maneuvers. Yeah, this is not set up. This is what it is. And you have to also, your brain acting. At first, it's much too fast, and then it's kind of well, you don't have to fly like this, you know, like. Is that what it is?
You want to continue?
Let's continue it.
You do?
Yeah. No, I mean,
You
let's.
stop it?
Yeah.
I went to the link, right? That was the problem.
Yeah.
Now, where's the presentation?
Well, I'm sorry you guys think it's a young man's game. I'm sure you could all do it though. If you were committed to spending, over a dozen hours playing a computer simulator, you would definitely get the hang of it in no time.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, going to the videos is screwing up the. The heck? I mean, I can download it again, but I don't.
Minimize your window, be behind the window.
So I don't keep you guys too long. You could ask me any questions you want.
I got a question.
Yeah.
I was reading this morning, there's a drone operator in North Carolina that got into a little tussle with the state licensing board
Yeah.
for professional engineers and such. He was offering a service where he would video construction projects
Yeah.
and real estate.
Mhm.
I guess he got kind of twisted up with the licensing board for the surveyors. And they're claiming he's engaging in the act of surveying without a license. He's saying it's a First Amendment issue. So they've been in court a couple times, and I guess the most recent court case he lost again. So
Yeah. Well, I would
are you
imagine.
familiar with that, or are you?
I'm not familiar with that specific case. I do read a lot about this stuff. That one I've not heard of, but I would imagine it's because he's putting forward specific measurements that he's gained with his gimbaled camera, like type drone. Because so for instance, you can survey property and it is a very accurate camera, and then you use software to interpolate that and create those measurements. But I think the thing you're talking about in terms of the professional liability of a surveyor is a surveyor is putting their name on it, saying, this is exactly where it measures to. And I think it's very different from a drone cannot do that. It's
Right.
what you're seeing from the sky is very different from on the ground. So I can understand that. But
He wasn't able to convince the judge. So.
yeah, I believe that, people think drones can do a lot. They can do a lot, but not every single thing. So yeah, but there's a lot of uses. Doing that, what's it called? It's basically like sonar topography, or LiDAR. That's a big use for the drones, because there's no perspective like looking down. And there's I forget the name. There's a movie camera company that instead of just offering cameras on drones, now they're doing lighting that comes with no infrastructure. They're just floating a huge light for a set. And I forget the name of the movie that did it, but basically they only used drone lighting, which, it sounds to me like it would be loud, but apparently they did it very well. So this is what's inside of what you got in front of you. We talked about it a little bit before. At the end of the day, we're just trying to control the direction of the motors and then sync that up with the gyro and figuring out how do you go forward? How do you fly forward when you have no wings? That means, spinning the motors at a different speed and counter rotating itself. Can you go to the next slide? So, I tried to break it down. I took it out of order. The flight controller here is you're creating this stack, and those are the solder pads, those little copper. It's a nightmare to solder. So I won't bring you into that. But everything has to be soldered together, because the more of these plug headers that you use, the more the vibration can kind of jostle things loose, and you can't quite go to the very limit. But let me just point out the big overlay one. That's your gyro, or that's your signal chip. That's taking all the stuff in and assimilating it. And I'm pretty sure the gyro chip is down here at the bottom, that long bar. Or maybe the OS, anyways. But each thing has its own little place. And so if you do a solder bridge, I don't know if any of you solder, but a solder bridge can just be ruinous
because every power is coursing through this thing, and they're very tiny. Let's go to the next one.
Do you connect the two of these together with soldering?
That is the back of each, so they are just laden with
Oh, I'm
chips.
sorry, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, all right,
Um,
two side board,
But
okay.
that plug
yeah.
header, that's gonna go into that plug header, and that's, so it talks about PWM signal. So the pulse width of the three different controls for the digital motor. So I don't know if you guys had a chance to spin. Yeah.
I'm looking at your controller over here. You didn't build this, did you?
No.
No. So how do you get the controller to talk to the drone?
So there's a receiver, it goes transmitter to receiver, and then that goes to the flight controller. And so the flight controller takes your proportional movements on the sticks, which are like, a 0 to 1,000.
Isn't that it here?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's interpreting that, and then it's pushing it out to the ESC to on very, very small, minute levels, change what the ESC is doing. And in fact, these ESCs can do, it's called, anyways, when you brake the motor, when you pull the throttle down, it can actually, not brake, but it slows it down on purpose. It doesn't just like free spin. And then it can generate power back like you do in like your hybrid car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
generator
better
action.
braking, right, exactly, yeah. And so, you get these crazy power spikes coming back to the ESC, and so there's tons of filtering. They use these things called MOSFET chips, which you have in like a bunch of your ham radio stuff. There's MOSFET chips are just drivers to open and close a pole. And so you're doing that at like just the most incredible speeds. And so the thing is spinning, the motors could at high RPM are like 80,000 RPM, and it's proportional to the kV, so the amount of voltage that you're putting in. And that's the only thing that really controls your RPM. And so they go fast, but you have a ton of control because you can slow the motors down just in a moment. They don't just like freestyle. So if you want to go down to the next two down, is going to be, yeah. So that big chunk is basically, it's a heat sink on top of a bunch of MOSFETs that drive each one of those corners, is the three different phases for a brushless motor. And so the two little prongs on the bottom, that's where you're going to get, so that just 10 gauge, 12 gauge wire, and that's going to be for your battery. And so it's DC current, and you're just trying to transfer as much power as possible through these things. So you get huge power spikes, and they do fry. So if you get a ton of resistance, let's say you get stuck in a tree and you try to break yourself free, you can get so much backflow of current because there's so much resistance going through that you can sometimes, fry your electronics. And this is the video transmitter. So, this is the digital version because it's in a nice tidy box with a heat sink. Of course, it's going to be the more expensive digital version. The analog stuff is, much more bare bones, but it's more reliable. You can work on it. Yeah. And so these are the batteries I was telling you about. So on the bottom left, that's where you're charging them in parallel. So, I don't think a lot of you maybe have done remote control cars or things like that. Maybe if your grandkids or children, nowadays, the fancy thing to do is to parallel charge these batteries. So you treat them all like one big cell. And it's a huge risk because there's just so much power held inside these. And really what that battery is a plastic foil protector with a little bit of like harder like paper stock, and then many folds of lithium polymer with just low quality construction. And so really expensive drones, like you see on the movie sets, or emergency management, right? Some of the very expensive drones, a lot of the money is going into the batteries because the batteries have to be so dependable. But I don't need to carry on. I know I've been going on for a while.
Move on.
Yeah, we'll move on. So whether or not you fly drones, you may be interested to know what is in the sky above you. Is somebody supposed to be flying a drone there, wherever you are, or not? I would tell you to download the 3 apps on the top, the Aloft, Before You Fly, and Air Map. It's super interesting to know that your backyard is in a restricted airspace, and there should be no flying of anything over you because you're within 4 miles of TF3, or there's tiny little airport strips for for farms, and you're not supposed to fly near a hospital, you're not supposed to fly over a school, you're definitely not supposed to fly over a federal building. There's a lot of restricted airspace here in Rhode Island. If you see somebody flying a drone in like a wildlife management area, probably not doing it legally, because the DEM is really strict on permits. You have to be essentially a Part 107, which is a commercial drone pilot, to get a permit. I've tried as just an amateur. I like to push the boundaries. I tried to get a permit and they said, no, it's pretty much just for like news crews or people like that, or, you know, high-end photographers that are making more money. So where can you fly? If you want to get into this, I would say get the Whoop or you know, let's build a toothpick and fly someplace small. You have to stay below 400 feet. And, you know, a big room like this, you can have like full on racing. There's like, where is it called? The Red Barn in Foster has Whoop racing. Anyways, tons you can do with a drone inside at a certain level. You want to go to the next one?
By the way, the 5 mile restriction is in addition to the 400 foot, right? They're like two
Yes.
separate,
Always under
always
400
400 feet. yeah.
always under 400 feet. You have to get a special permit to go above that. You'd have to have a really specific need for that.
Okay.
And in fact, for the first time ever, so normally you cannot fly a drone beyond your line of sight. And what does that mean? It means you need to have somebody standing next to you, like your wife, who watches you fly your drone, looking like an idiot, and saying, hey, you're coming near a tree, or hey, there's a small airplane over in that direction. Do you see that? Which no, you will not see it because your camera is too limited and you need the spotter next to you. So as long as they can naturally see the drone, you're within line of sight. You have to get a special permit to do beyond visual line of sight. And in fact, the FAA just gave their first like permanent permit, which makes no sense because it's not a permit really, to one company to do infrastructure inspections for power lines. And they have like an indefinite beyond visual line of sight permit. They just happened. Otherwise, you're not supposed to. But really, how do you fly a drone if it does not go a little bit farther than your line of sight? It's kind of a conundrum. So there's a lot of rules. Beyond checking the air map, if you do this, you have to check for NOTAMs, which are emergency kind of messages that say, hey, there's a training exercise in the military going on, or the Air Force One is going to be flying overhead. No flying in this flight path at all. It can be much lower level reasons for that happens. Anyways, and those tiny whoops are under 250 grams. So the general rules, under 400 feet, nowhere within 4 miles of an airport. Also, if you're under 250 grams, you don't have to register your drone with the FAA. And you're allowed to fly over people as long as you're not hovering over people. But there's special rules for all that. Because again, they don't want you to run out of battery, not thinking about it, and suddenly come down over a crowd. So yeah, and the big thing in the law, come September of this year, there's going to be all new rules about how every single drone has to broadcast basically telemetry data, identification of the pilot and the owner. There's all these rules that are coming in, unless they give you some caveats, which are mostly going to be home-built drones, don't have to do that, or in a much more limited way. But the rules are developing, and we don't know where they're going to go. So it's an ongoing conversation.
Are they rules or laws?
FAA rules, administrative rules. And so, but Congress can do their own thing. And there's a FAA Reauthorization Act that's happening. And so there's a lot of pressure within the hobbyist community to try to get the FAA to, or at least to get Congress to be aware of some of the benefits of drones, the risks of drones, that there should be a happy medium. And the FAA should not be quite so restricted. Like 250 grams is very, very small. It's very, very light. And so you can barely get a battery into a drone like that. And so it really kind of puts the stop to the hobby, without having major expense. I mean, yeah, they're going to give these areas called FRIAs, which are basically community-based flying areas. But they say across the country, they're only going to do like 2,000 of them. Unlikely there'll be a FRIA here in Rhode Island with so much controlled airspace. It's kind of sad because I think that kids could learn a lot from this. One, there's, everyone's on their phone, on playing video games on a computer. You are playing a video game, but you are doing something also very, very real. And there's a real team aspect to it. I don't know if anyone here likes that show BattleBots. Maybe I'm falling on.
I haven't seen it in years, but yeah.
Well, so it's a whole team that built that thing. And then they're getting out there and, they've got one guy that's the pilot. They've got, support team. There's a whole bunch of stuff. This is an aircraft. The FAA considers this an aircraft, even though you're not aboard, you have to do maintenance. You have to account for it. You're putting it in the air. It's an airplane, or it's an aircraft, and it's just unmanned. So,
So if your neighbor shoots down your drone.
the neighbor, you're not, because you couldn't shoot down an aircraft that was hovering over your property. It's the same exact thing. They can make a complaint, but they cannot shoot it down. Technically the FAA should stand up and do something about that. Because there's also emergency reasons why a drone could be hovering over your property that you have no idea about. It's not just some amateur like me flying a drone too close to your house, which I wouldn't do. And yeah, so that's it. Want to go to the next one? So, if you guys want to learn how to do this, happy to show anybody. Tell you what, the soldering, it's so small, but it's also very gratifying because it's a little bit of art when it turns out nice. So they look very, very clean when you get them organized. It looks really good. I'm sure a nice ham shack when everything's tidy in its right place. It's a similar feeling. And I think that's me. And then I left at the end a whole bunch of resources. If you guys are interested, I can only say if you're bored, coming up in April, there is a drone race. Paul, can you just go down to
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, April 22. So in Amesbury, Mass. So if you happen to be in Amesbury, Mass, on April 22, you could go to a drone race. Yeah. So that's that. I hope it didn't bore everyone too much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I know it's late.
No, it's fine. Policy too for all of this, with your, understanding of the drone law, like everything you're saying, that you're actually building these yourself and doing them. I'm gonna go turn the lights on.
Okay. Oh,
Thank
thanks.
you. But I was actually, asking our other drone expert over here, what's your sense of looking at everything he's doing? I was hoping you could share your comments.
It's fascinating to see, the stuff that I'm more familiar with, is large scale predator reefing, those kind of things that are flown, remotely. This is just a whole different animal. I think the skills are really more demanding because of the relative speed that you're moving at. See where you're going, react in time, not crash. Okay, well, you say you do understand.
They're not going to deny.
I think it's a fascinating hobby. I hate to see the FAA clamp down too much on it, but I also don't want me to be flying an airplane that's such a problem.
So true. So true.
I know when I really worked with the balloon.
Oh, yes.
Get radio balloon, ATRS, report to that, it goes into some signal somewhere around the world, gets sucked up. But that whole mass requirement is all based on what gets sucked into a commercial jet engine and not have any effect. So the different components that you use, the limitation on that, the mass, those are all different things that in the instance of commercial jets are supposed to be able to suck in these hand radio balloons along with the circuit card and little solar panels that power it up, but right through the engine have no effect.
Yeah.
So, for 400 feet. I'm not gonna be sucking you into my game, but,
Yeah.
somebody else.
Yeah, but there's that interaction, there's that like transition zone. And so, when I was preparing for this, I talked to Nancy about like, she was asking, where can you fly these things? What does it look like? And it really, in my mind, what is national airspace? It's everything like where the tree in your backyard stops, because that's where any old pilot that has a small single engine plane, an ultralight, even a person that has one of those, I forget what they're called, where they've got the sail and they've got the backpack engine, the true like do-it-yourselfer. They could fly right over your house, over the top of a tree. It's not your airspace. You couldn't build there and they can fly there. So that's national airspace technically. And so where you take the drone in exchange, that kind of transition zone between below 400 feet, but also it's wide open, it's national airspace. There's, that's the risk factor and also what you fly over. And that's why I say the small light stuff is the bread and butter of the hobby. It's really fun because there's so much less mass. It's much less likely to break. But to where you were talking about your drones with like, the Reaper, right? The Global Hawk, all the new designs. I think there's a real place. The communications link is an issue, but this style of drone where, it's like Star Wars, like where they're going in that last thing to do the bomb in between the canyon. They say that there's a place in the military for drones like this, where you've got kind of a mothership and then it releases a bunch of bomblets, small drones like this. And I do think I have no idea what the landscape of the future looks like, but I know when you're flying, at least in some of these videos where you get like 4 or 5 people flying side by side and they're like a little squadron. I don't know what you could do with the thing. I know there's videos from Ukraine, but those are kind of jerry-rigged and I think the switchback drone that they've created now, that kind of one-way kinetic device, is a good analogy for like what this thing is. So there is a danger for the public, and I don't deny that. I just don't think it's kind of as terrifying as kind of the FAA wants to. So I hope that there's still room for hobbyists and young kids, and there's a lot of aeronautical engineering in these things, and there's a lot of physics. Sorry, I don't mean to carry on.
Do they use drones with lasers like the New Year celebration?
Yes. Yeah.
How many drones are involved in that?
So that is not 200 guys like me standing side by side operating. Those are done through software. They are drones like this. They're not camera drones. How many do they use? Those displays are very expensive. Hundreds.
2,500.
Yeah.
3,000.
And they're all programs. It's a point of light in the air, each one. And then it can change, they can change color. It's just an RGB LED.
Those are drones.
Yeah, those are drones. And they have to get another permit because they're flying at night.
Above 400.
Yes, and technically the FAA regulation is if you're flying at night, you have to have a 3-mile beacon. You have to have a light, a white light that's visible from 3 miles away. How do they get away with that? They need a special exemption from the FAA, and they have a track history of safety. So that seems to be the big thing with the FAA is seeing a company get a lot of little permits, and then they get a lot more trust. They show, okay, they're not pushing the boundaries. They're doing what they say they're going to do in the permit. So yeah. Yeah. Any questions about what you're holding? I don't know. I didn't mean to.
What's an entry level price?
All right. So
Lights in the room.
So like what? $100 for one of these tiny whoops, but then you need the gear, right? So this, it might be really fancy looking, but as long as you take off this extra 900 megahertz transmitter back, you just get this transmits on like, I think at least 10 different, it's a multiple spectrum or protocol unit inside. This is like $100, just a little more. And so then you get the goggle. I didn't mean to not talk for a long time. The goggle, this is expensive and you're committing yourself to it. So these, the tiny whoop is $100. The goggle is like $150, $200. And another $100 for the transmitter, and then you've got the batteries. So, and
those batteries are much like, those are like maybe $8 a piece. They're not like these, which are more like 25.
$500 plus.
You can catch a deal, but yeah, $400 to get started. And then, you know, you really need a group, but you know, one of you buys it, you know, we could do that. It's a multi-level marketing scheme. So yeah, anyways, that's everything. But happy to also show what the drone video looks like through either a goggle or a screen. If you guys are interested, but I've been talking for a long time, so I don't know.
Tell me what led you to build these yourself though, because I think that's a whole different level. Not everybody's gonna be a build it yourself person. Have you always done that, or was this you're looking your way?
Yeah. I get bored. I have to learn stuff to keep myself engaged. And so I like technical things. I like to organize. And so organizing small bits of wire and tiny soldering, and then teaching myself to program it, and then have the backbone to put this thing in the air after you put so much time into it. Yeah, that's, I need to keep myself engaged, and I like, you know, technical little things.
I love self-torture when I'm here.
Yeah, but also I think, you know, like ham radio, if you don't use it, you're gonna lose it, right? And so, you know, not many people are flying, you know, very few people fly kites, very few people float balloons, very few people do RC airplanes. Very, very few. And those that do fly those RC airplanes have like, I mean, some of those things are like $20,000 for the jets. I mean, this is nothing compared to that. So, I mean, all the more reason to get in here. But yeah, that's it. And it's visually stunning when you like actually achieve a good flight. You've recorded the flight, and you've landed it safely. It's an incredible feeling because one, you had the experience in the air, and then you relive it through the footage on the ground after you put like a GoPro. That's, yeah, it's exciting.
So what I'm hearing is your wife needs to be working on her producer skill. Because you don't even use it.
No, that I'm one step away from YouTube.
Well, I think it's also the interiors that you did. I'm really interested. I know that Google is now mapping interior spaces as well. So I think that the awareness that the next generation is going to grow up with, being able to navigate like that, that's a kind of spatial awareness that is, you know, it's important for all of us to know that that's here, really, you know.
I didn't know that about Google. I don't know whether, you know, that's interesting. I mean, yeah.
First it was spatial recognition, now it's sort of spatial, you know, spatial recognition. So, Kaczynski, what is your first name again?
Okay.
So, what you were shaking your head.
Oh, yeah. You know, so we've been doing, I work for a company, we do commercial fishing observers, protected species observing for a lot of the offshore wind farm work right now. We've been jumping in with drones sort of at two levels, some aerial and also some aquatic, marine level, which is interesting because when you end up with a whole another regulatory agency that you have to deal with, the Coast Guard, we just did, it was a UAV, so unmanned autonomous vehicle. So it's basically steering itself. There is a pilot technically that's kind of just sitting there watching it. But it was really interesting for us as a company. We're using it to look for whales, specifically on this project. It's sitting at the wave level. They have a pilot that's sitting in Europe, and I'm forgetting what country. Our visual observers, because they have to have certain credentials to be able to say, yes, that was a whale, based on this type of spout, probably this kind, et cetera. Has to be a totally different set of regulations, all of that they meet. So they're remotely in on a meeting, sitting at the same time. So there's really like three people watching a feed of this autonomous vehicle out in the middle of the ocean to see if there's any any whales there that would get in the way for destruction at that time. And then the other one that we're doing is aerial based, but sort of addressing two issues, the power issue and having limited capacity. We ended up going with what they're called, it's kind of a hybrid, a tethered drone. So basically you picture a drone with a big kite line off of it. There's a lot of advantages, there's obviously disadvantages, your height, what it is, and all that. But your time that you're able to stay up is more or less unlimited. Not quite. I think it's 72 hours or something like that. Technically, but you have to bring it in for maintenance purposes, basically. But it gets you higher resolution for the video feeds. It kind of bridges the gap where the fully remote is not able to do.
It's capable of supporting an antenna besides.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And it's a controlled landing, because you're dragging it back in.
Correct.
You're not like, oh, the deck.
And you're doing
I'll
it,
land.
Yeah, and you're dealing with, ship in motion, et cetera, that you're landing on. So, it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I'm gonna stop the recording just because it'll be too long.
So do people want to get up and play with his things and ask questions then?